The women in our village indulged in meat and fish at every meal. Yet each one was renowned for her alluring figure, with waists so slender they could be encircled by a single hand. The moment they detected even a slight excess of fat, they would rush to my mother, begging for her special flesh worm to consume it all. Mother would always say, "It eats the flesh, but it steals the life." "Anya, come here. Have a chicken drumstick." The young bride eyed the glistening, fatty drumstick before her, swallowing hard. She then touched the rolls of fat around her waist, hesitated, and finally hung her head in embarrassment. "No, I can't eat any more. I've gained so much weight lately. My husband even complained about it last night." The other village women burst into laughter. "Oh, my dear, what's a little extra fat? Look at us. We eat like this every day and still maintain our perfect figures. Women in our village are famous for their curves." Anya, who had only recently married into the village, watched their slender waists, her admiration clearly visible in her eyes. "Oh, how can I compare to you all? A few more bites and I'll be bursting." The women chuckled, playfully waving her over. "Come with us tonight to a special place. We guarantee that when you wake up, your waist will be so slim, your husband can embrace it with one hand." Anya's eyes widened. "There's such a good thing. Where is it?" She followed the direction of the women's fingers, turning her head until her gaze landed on me. "At her house. If her mother sees someone like you, she'll be overjoyed. Don't worry, it's just her and her mother at home. Coming in the middle of the night won't be a problem." Noticing Anya's scrutinizing gaze, I gave a slight nod. My mother was the village healer, highly skilled in her craft. Villagers sought her out for any ailment. Most importantly, she possessed a unique method. Any woman, no matter how obese, could become slender and svelte simply by visiting my mother. This made the women of the village revere my mother like a fairy, daily pleading with her to remove their excess fat. Anya, newly arrived, was half believing, half skeptical, but by midnight she couldn't resist following the women as they knocked on our courtyard gate. "They're here. They're here." My mother heard the sound outside and rushed to greet them. "It's only been in a few days, and you ladies couldn't control your appetites again. Have you gotten fat?" When my mother saw the arrivals, her eyes immediately fixed on Anya. She gazed at Anya's excess waist fat with satisfaction, continuously urging, "Come in, quickly now." The woman next to Anya chuckled softly. "See? Didn't I tell you? Madame Vu sees fat like she's found a treasure." The women bustled into the courtyard. They were familiar with the way, heading straight for the dark room in our house. "Madame Vu, Anya's husband complains about her weight. Please help her first." My mother, overjoyed, led Anya alone into the dark room. She glanced at me, giving a signal, and I quickly grabbed the medicine box from the corner and followed. Inside the dark room, Anya was a little nervous, flustered, and unsure what to do. My mother smiled, coaxing her onto the bed. "What's there to be afraid of? Which woman in this village hasn't been here? When you wake up, I guarantee you'll be delighted with your figure." My mother took several dark pills from the medicine box and instructed Anya to swallow them. Before long, Anya's breathing became steady and she drifted into a deep sleep. I saw my mother contentedly patting the fat on Anya's body, smacking her lips. It's been so long since I've had such a plump body arrive. Yeah, today, my precious pet can feast on a delicious meal. With that, she opened a hidden compartment in the medicine box and carefully retrieved a stone jar. Seeing the lid of the stone jar being pushed open continuously, I knew that terrifying thing was about to appear. My mother pulled a pallid white flesh worm from the jar. As soon as it was out, the worm seemed to catch the scent of a woman, wriggling directly towards Anya's body. It twisted and turned until my mother placed it on Anya's navel, whereupon it promptly burrowed inside. Even though I had witnessed this scene countless times, it still made me shiver. Indeed, my mother's method for helping women maintain their figures was to let this worm slowly consume all the excess fat in their bodies. The worm incessantly squirmed inside, gnawing away, and before long, the bulging areas on Anya's stomach flattened. From afar, I could see the worm beneath her skin, growing larger and faster. By the time it poked its head out from Anya's mouth, its body had swollen several times its original size. My mother greedily stroked the worm, muttering to herself, "It must be full." Eh? Anya on the bed no longer had her former plump figure. Her waist seemed to have shrunk by several inches, and even her face was much smaller. There wasn't a speck of excess fat on her entire body. The only thing was her face was a terrifyingly pale white, completely devoid of color. My mother, seeing Anya's terrible complexion, immediately inserted silver needles into various acupuncture points on her body. Before long, Anya awoke. I can be like this? Anya stared at herself in the mirror in disbelief, looking herself over again. "This tiny waist? My husband will be so happy when I go home." The worry had vanished from Anya's face, replaced by uncontainable joy. When my mother led her out of the dark room, the other women immediately swarmed around her. "See, now you're just like us. Eat as much as you want, you won't lose your figure." "Madame Vieux, please help me. I've eaten so much these past few days. I don't feel comfortable." After my mother used the worm to consume the fat from each woman, they would leave our house, satisfied. As they departed, their steps were shaky, as if all strength had drained from their bodies. Each time, someone would inevitably mutter, "Who cares if I'm weak for a few days? It's better than being a fat old hag." But my mother had always said that the worm in the stone jar ate flesh, but stole life. The fates of these women had already been more than half stolen. As soon as the last woman left, my mother pushed me aside, cradling the plump flesh worm alone, and hurriedly prepared to return to the dark room. I secretly followed her, wondering what she truly did with the flesh worm each time. To my surprise, after looking around, my mother forcefully pushed aside the wardrobe in the corner of the room, revealing a hidden iron door. I never knew such a place existed in our house. Ngọc liều ngams, no I. Yen cần that spot saying. Sunlight, then Nixonda house. Waiting for her to enter, I cautiously approached the wardrobe. A strange sound echoed in my ears, like the wriggling of the flesh worm inside a body. After a long while, footsteps emerged from behind the door. I quickly hid inside the wardrobe. Peering through the crack, I saw my mother emerge, drenched in sweat, and the flesh worm in her hand had returned to its usual small size, motionless. Just as curiosity compelled me to see what lay behind that iron door, my mother's voice called me from the courtyard. I had no choice but to rush out. In the moment I turned to leave, I thought I heard a series of heartbeats echoing from behind the iron door. Thump, 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 ta-ta. My mother sat in the courtyard, gently stroking the flesh worm. Eat a little more. It's almost a success. I hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly beside her. Mother, the women in the village can't take much more. If you keep using the flesh worm to steal their lives, I'm afraid something terrible will happen. My mother laughed dismissively. What are their lives worth? With that, she looked towards the dark room, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The flesh worm in my mother's hand lay shriveled. My mother lamented, too thin. Those women still need to eat more. Saying this, she placed the flesh worm back into the stone jar, stood up, and went to Old Man Liu's pork stall in the village. Less than 2 days later, Old Man Liu's stall began selling fragrant pork, fat pastries. No one knew what secret ingredient was added to these pastries, but their aroma could be smelled from a mile away. The village women loved them. Even Anya was happily eating, her mouth greasy, wiping her lips with a handkerchief as she ate. Because my mother was there, they had no fear of getting fat. According to the women, even if they ate like pigs, a single visit to Madame View's house would immediately restore their figures. Little did they know, my mother was sitting at home, clutching the flesh worm, waiting for them to knock on her door. These people came to my house more and more often. My mother used the flesh worm to relentlessly consume their flesh and steal their lives, causing their bodies to deteriorate even faster. Finally, right after Old Man Liu sold out another batch of pork fat pastries, someone couldn't bear it anymore. When my mother was invited to examine them in their homes, she found several women who frequently visited us, lying in their beds. They constantly mumbled, Madame View, we won't be greedy anymore. This body, thin then fat, fat then thin. We really can't take it anymore. My mother heard these words, smiling but saying nothing. Yet, the syringe in her hand did not hesitate as she plunged it into the women's body. I had once seen my mother prepare that kind of medicine before, but that was when our sow wasn't putting on enough fat. Lately, very few people came to our house, but my mother was mysteriously busy every day, doing who knows what. Late at night, half asleep, half awake, I suddenly heard rustling footsteps outside the door. Remembering the thumping heartbeat I'd heard in that dark room, I quickly opened my eyes and sat up, secretly observing. As the footsteps faded, I gently opened my bedroom door. Was that shadow my mother? I saw her once again entering the iron door of the dark room. When she emerged, there was an unusual joy on her face. Waiting for my mother to return to her room to rest, I couldn't suppress the suspicion in my heart. I summoned all my courage, got up, and went to the dark room. This normally familiar room was now filled with a strange, chilling aura. I painstakingly moved the wardrobe, careful not to make any noise that might wake my mother. Standing outside the iron door, the thumping heartbeat, thump, 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 was very clear, seeming even stronger than before. Tensely, I gripped the doorknob, eventually pushing the door open just a crack. A pungent, foul smell wafted out. The room inside was pitch black, without a trace of light. Wow! I shone the flashlight I carried into the room, revealing strange symbols drawn all over the four walls. I had seen these symbols in my mother's medical books before, but never knew their meaning. I braced my hand against the cold wall and slowly stepped inside. As the light swept across, I could see shelves filled with stone jars and silver needles that my mother often used, and that strange heartbeat seemed to still be coming from within. I followed the sound, finally reaching an old, worn-out screen. Thump, 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 thump. You know, the sound was almost right beside me. When I finally gathered all my courage and stepped behind the screen, the sight before me made me gasp. Burst dots. A man lay still on the bed. His familiar form made me quickly shine the flashlight on his face. There was no color in his face. His eyes were tightly closed, and the corners of his mouth were stiffly curved into a bizarre smile. When I clearly saw his face, the flashlight dropped to the ground with a clatter. The person on the bed was my brother. But my brother had died 10 years ago. Not long after I was born, my father had drowned in the river after getting drunk. From childhood, my mother had always given all the good things in our home to my brother. She only ever thought that once my brother was a few years older, she would marry me off. The dowry from my marriage would be just enough for my brother to marry. But exactly 10 years ago, a sudden plague swept through, claiming the lives of half the village. My brother was among them. At that time, my mother was so worried she spent days poring over medical texts. But she couldn't find a cure for the plague. She could only watch as my brother took his last breath. One day alone. Wow. But I never imagined that the person who should have been buried in our ancestral grave was now lying perfectly preserved in our secret room. Thinking of this, I stumbled back a few steps in fear, then ran out in a panic. When I returned to my room, my entire body still felt as if I were in a dream. Every time my mother used the flesh worm to gnaw away the fat from the women, was she stealing their lives for my brother? Just as I was reeling from this horrifying realization, a knock sounded at our gate. My mother heard the commotion and got up, calling, "Who's there?" I wondered too. Lately, all the women in the village were sick in bed. Who would come to our house at this hour? When I opened the gate, I saw several men pushing their wives, who stood before our gate. "Where's your mother? Quickly, tell her to cure my wife. Her waist is fat as a barrel, truly unsightly. I work all day, and in the evening, I have to look at that lazy pig lying on the bed. It's truly sickening." The women hung their heads, not daring to speak. In just over half a month, they had gained several sizes. The fat around their waists couldn't be hidden even by loose clothing. Their entire bodies looked much heavier. Mai, who was usually talkative, now muttered with red-rimmed eyes, "Don't make me go in. Tomorrow, I'll definitely eat less." But this earned her a heavy slap from her husband. My mother stepped out, her face showing no surprise at the sight of the women. She half scolded, "You ladies can never control your mouths, always waking me up in the middle of the night." Ling cried out in resentment, "I don't know what's wrong with me. All day I can't stop wanting to eat. My stomach is full, but I still crave food. My mother said nothing more, silently leading them into the secret room. When she opened the door again, I saw a row of women, thin as sticks, lying scattered behind her. I sighed to myself. Their lives were about to be completely stolen. Go call their husbands to come and take them home, my mother said to me, holding the flesh worm. With that, she gave me a cold glare. The secret of the flesh worm. You must not reveal a single word. I nodded obediently and turned to go outside. Just as I reached the door, I suddenly heard the wardrobe being moved from behind me. A sense of unease rose in my heart. I had forgotten something in my panic. The flashlight I dropped seemed to still be on the ground. It was too late to go back and pick it up now. Oh, I could only rush out to call the men from each house to quickly carry these dying women home. To my surprise, when those men arrived at my house and saw the skeletal figures lying on the ground, they were utterly delighted. Now, this is beautiful. Her tiny waist fits perfectly in my hand with just a gentle grasp. Zhang looked at his wife and sneered. Being thin is good, isn't it? Let's see if you'll dare to defy me after this. Her slender legs were so weak, she collapsed before even leaving her maternal home's gate. After these women had been carried away, my mother emerged from the dark room. I anxiously looked at her face, but saw only unadulterated joy. Perhaps my mother was in a hurry to save my brother and hadn't even noticed the flashlight I dropped. My heart finally felt a little relieved. From that day onward, every night, I heard two distinct sets of footsteps. One was my mother's, but could the other be my brother's? I didn't dare leave my room. I could only hide behind the door and listen silently. My son, you're still not fully recovered, but don't be impatient. Mother will surely help you return to your normal self soon. My mother mumbled joyfully, but there was no rah-rah-rah. Only stiff, mechanical footsteps echoed in my ears. The women in the village had all been tormented by the flesh worm to the point where they had only a few days left to live. Where else could my mother go to steal more life? Just as my mother frowned daily over this problem, the appearance of a woman reminded her. It was Anya. Anya had only recently married into our village. Naturally, her body was still in the best condition. When she stood at our door with a swollen belly, my mother's eyes lit up. Come in. Let's talk inside. My mother stared at the rolls of fat all over her body, smiling so wide she almost couldn't speak. I watched Anya, her plump figure, slowly step inside. She looked at my mother with a distressed expression. Madame Vieux, I've eaten too much lately. Can you help me? My husband is going to nag me to death over all this fat. My mother heard this and immediately agreed. What are you afraid of with me here? One sleep, and you'll be back to your slender self, I guarantee it. My mother led her step by step into the dark room, but little did Anya know she was walking into hell. This time, my mother was particularly focused. She told me to bring the medicine box and follow. Seeing Anya lying on the bed with a trusting expression, my heart ached. While my mother's back was turned, I secretly tugged Anya's sleeve and whispered, "Don't eat so much next time. It's not good for your health." But Anya, looking embarrassed, replied, poor health is better than being fat like a pig. My husband, he doesn't like it. I shook my head and moved to the side. She swallowed the pills my mother gave her and fell into a deep sleep. A hopeful smile still lingered on her sleeping face. My mother took out the flesh worm and eagerly placed it on Anya's navel. I watched as the flesh worm quickly burrowed into her body, greedily devouring layers of fat. Just as I couldn't bear to watch and was about to turn away, everything before my eyes began to go wrong. The flesh worm, which had been crawling, suddenly seemed to go berserk, turning its head and burrowing into Anya's lower abdomen. Its speed of gnawing grew faster and faster, and even its body emitted a strange red light. My mother saw this situation and shouted, "This is bad! It's ruined! Ruined! She's pregnant!" But no matter how much my mother urged it, the flesh worm wouldn't move. The red light from its body grew more dazzling, piercing through Anya's abdomen, which continuously swelled. My mother anxiously stamped her feet nearby. The flesh worm gnawed for an unknown period before finally stopping, satisfied. Anya on the bed had indeed become thin, so thin there wasn't a speck of flesh left. Her wrinkled skin clung to her bones, and she lay stiffly in our dark room, no longer breathing. My mother paid no attention to the dead woman on the bed. Her mind solely focused on her flesh worm. When the flesh worm finally wriggled out of Anya's mouth, its body almost got stuck, and the red light gradually faded. My mother examined the flesh worm repeatedly, her expression slowly shifting from gloomy to bright. Perhaps this misfortune has truly turned into a blessing. When Anya's husband arrived at our house, there was no trace of sorrow on his face. He opened his mouth and immediately began to bargain with my mother. "Someone died in your house. You have to give me an explanation." My mother knew she was at fault and didn't argue much. She took several stacks of money and thrust them into Anya's husband's hands, considering the matter closed. He stood beside Anya's corpse, grinning. "With this money, I can marry a new wife now." After that, he hastily left our house. "Your wife still needs to be buried. You can't just leave her here." My mother called out anxiously from the doorway, but the man didn't turn back, only waving his hand. "You can bury her wherever you want. Women with ill fates are bad luck. I won't let her enter our ancestral grave." My mother looked at Anya with disgust. She frowned and told me, "Go get a torn mat, wrap her in it, and throw her into the gully behind the house." I stared blankly at the pitiful woman before me, a bitter taste in my heart. There were often wild beasts on the mountain behind us. I couldn't bear to abandon her in the gully, so I dug a hole and buried Anya there. I took the loose change from my pocket, went to the east end of the village, and bought several stacks of spirit money. As the smoke from the burning paper money rose, I knelt before Anya's grave and whispered, "Please, take your child and find a good reincarnation. In your next life, don't be so greedy. Fat or thin, it doesn't matter. It's better than losing your life." Looking at the mound of earth before me, I sank to the ground, feeling helpless. When I returned home, my mother was cooking by the stove. Seeing me return so late, she uncharacteristically didn't scold me. "Hurry, bring the food to the table." The rich, fragrant smell of stir-fried meat on the plate made my mouth water. It had been many years since I'd seen such a delicious dish in our house. I carried the plate into the main room, and for a moment it seemed as if someone was already sitting at the dining table. As I approached and looked closely, I was so frightened. My lips trembled uncontrollably. Brother! Brother! Why are you here? My brother heard the sound and turned his head, his neck still stiff, making a grating clunk, clunk sound. My dear sister, if not at home, where else would I be? Since my brother came back to life, our home became bustling. My mother bought him dozens of clothes, and even fish and meat piled up in the kitchen. Villagers joked, asking if my mother had found a gold ingot. But I knew my mother's heart was even happier than finding money. Each day, my brother's waking hours were few. He mostly remained in a deep sleep. Yet every night I heard him eating. Not just leftovers, but even fresh raw fish and meat my mother had just bought. The next morning, only tiny bone fragments remained. My mother felt sorry for him, endlessly bringing home all kinds of fresh meat and fish, but she didn't seem to notice that despite eating so much, he never gained any weight, remaining as gaunt as when he first woke up. I didn't dare say much, only watched as my mother spent all our family's wealth. Not long after, joyful news spread through our village. Anya's husband was getting remarried. Hearing this, the villagers considered it perfectly normal. His wife died. Shouldn't he quickly find another? Exactly. A married man can't bear to be alone. These words came from none other than the women whose lives were almost spent. Now, they rarely ate anything, surviving on mere scraps of porridge. I knew it was because the flesh worm had thoroughly hollowed them out. How? Yet precisely because of this, they were even more joyful. My husband says he loves my current figure the most. Yes, since I got thin, I don't eat much and rarely go out. My husband smiles more at home. It was also on the occasion of the village's happy event that they gathered together again. My mother also took me to Anya's house. Looking at the door adorned with lanterns and flowers, the joyous atmosphere, I suddenly remembered the woman buried on the mountain behind us. She seemed to have been completely forgotten by everyone. Anya's husband wore a full red outfit, leading his bride to bow to heaven and earth before everyone. The cheers and applause from the villagers were incessant. My mother saw the newlyweds bowing at the altar and immediately pulled me away. If we didn't live in the same village, I wouldn't have come to this crowded, noisy place. It's deafening. But to my surprise, as we stepped out of the crowd, I saw a familiar figure in the distance. My brother stood there, his eyes vacant, staring intently at Anya's house. Brother, what are you doing here? Mother told you to rest at home if there's nothing to do. My mother quickly looked around, and seeing no one paying attention, she pulled him back home. But the way my brother's eyes had fixed on Anya's house made me feel uneasy. I secretly ran up the mountain behind us, searching everywhere for where I had buried Anya. But when I reached the spot, there was no longer any grave mound, only an empty pit with nothing inside. After returning from the mountain, I couldn't help but glance at my brother more often. Before, he had a very hot temper due to my mother's indulgence, but now he was always silent and spoke little, only showing a hint of vitality when faced with food. My mother, heartbroken by his years of incapacitation, kept spooning food into my brother's bowl. "Eat a lot, my son." And so my brother's body gradually changed. His stomach began to protrude, and his thighs were no longer as thin as before. My mother was so happy she couldn't stop smiling, constantly muttering that her son had truly recovered. But I noticed my brother was completely different from before. He used to be crude, always disheveled, and never groomed himself. Yet now, even though he ate huge amounts at every meal, he would wipe the grease from around his mouth with a handkerchief after a few bites. Not only that, whenever he was awake, he would stand before a basin of water and thoroughly wash his hair. This was completely unlike my brother's personality. I secretly asked my mother if her method of stealing lives with the fleshworm had truly saved my brother. My mother immediately slapped me. If not my son, then who? I've worked so hard for so many years. Could I have saved the wrong person? Yet, not long after, I realized she was wrong. The person my mother had stolen a life for and brought back was truly not my brother. My brother's stomach grew increasingly swollen. Everything edible in the house was consumed by him. My mother counted the money in her hand, worriedly saying, "My good son can't go hungry. We have to find another way." Just then, a knock came from outside. Madame View, are you home?" My mother opened the door and saw it was Anya's newlywed husband's new wife. A woman named Lily. "What's the matter?" My mother, seeing Lily's hurried expression, quickly asked, "Madame View, please come to my house and help. My husband suddenly fell ill last night, and now he looks like he's barely breathing." Finishing her words, Lily suddenly shivered all over. She hugged her shoulders, looking around. "Why is your courtyard so cold?" My mother, hearing another opportunity to earn money, didn't say another word, simply telling me to bring the medicine box and follow. When we arrived, we found the man on the bed with only a faint breath. His body so dry and thin, he looked as if he might break. My mother examined him for a while, pursing her lips, unable to speak. Lily was anxious. "Madame View, what exactly is happening?" After a long moment, my mother inserted several silver needles into the man. "I'm stumped by this strange illness. These needles will temporarily preserve his life. The rest depends on fate." My mother ignored Lily's desperate cries, turned her back, and left the room. On the way back, my mother suddenly looked at me. "Where did you discard Anya's body?" Startled by the question, I quickly pointed towards the mountain behind. "I left her in that foul drainage ditch." She frowned in thought. "That's not right." "How can that be?" In my heart, I secretly speculated. My mother had used the fleshworm to steal a life for my brother, but the condition of Anya's husband just now clearly showed signs of a body gnawed away by the fleshworm. Suddenly, I remembered vaguely hearing my brother leave the house last night. Could it have been him? At lunch, there was almost no food left on our table. Just as I reached for food, my mother slapped my chopsticks away. "Let your brother eat first." I reluctantly withdrew my hand, meekly drinking the rice water from the bottom of my bowl. My mother ate her meal and then went out. At this moment, a plate of food was gently pushed towards me. "Eat." My brother spoke, a rare occurrence in our house. His voice was softer, much more delicate, but his eyes still held a coldness I couldn't understand. I picked a few pieces of meat from the plate and put them in his bowl. "You should eat more now. Seeing his surprised gaze, I gave a slight nod. 2 streams of tears silently fell onto the dining table. The emotion in my brother's eyes shifted from self-pity to hatred. No, now I should call her Anya. The person my mother had stolen a life for with the flesh worm and brought back was not my brother, but Anya, who had tragically died in our secret room that day. If my guess wasn't wrong, her swollen belly wasn't due to overeating, but because the baby inside her was still alive. Late at night, the sudden cry of a newborn startled me awake. The sound pierced through the thin walls, particularly poignant and piercing. I got up and opened my door, discovering the baby's cries were coming from Anya's room. My mother was also woken up at this moment. "Where's that baby crying from?" Seeing her about to follow the sound of the cries, I quickly opened the window and said, "Mother, it's just a stray cat outside." My mother, half believing, half doubting, looked towards Anya's door. "Go chase it away quickly. Don't make noise and disturb your brother's rest." I nodded quickly, pretending to shoo away a cat. Seeing her return to her room, I immediately went to Anya's room. As I stepped in, I saw her lying on her side, clutching her stomach on the bed, her face contorted in pain. I lowered my voice and asked, "What's going on?" I heard crying and rushed over. How can this baby be crying before it's even born? Anya pushed herself up with her hands, rubbing her belly. "I'm carrying a ghost fetus. A ghost fetus," I gasped, covering my mouth. She gave a bitter laugh. "I'm pregnant in place of your brother. How can I give birth to a normal child?" I gathered all my courage and placed my hand on her belly, feeling the movement of the fetus within. Anya gripped my hand tightly. "The ghost fetus inside me won't stay for long. It will probably be born in a few more meals. You absolutely must help me." Looking at her belly, I finally nodded in agreement. The next morning, my mother left the house early and didn't return until sunset, her clothes still covered in fallen leaves and mud. Her face was grim as she entered the dark room, doing who knows what inside. "Go, bring this bowl of soup for your brother to drink." I looked at the night outside, wondering, why ask my brother to drink soup so late at night? Just go when I tell you to. Just go when I tell you to. Remember to watch him finish it before you come back. My mother slammed the bowl down on the table. Hey, I watched her retreating back, a sense of foreboding rising in my heart. Had Mother discovered something? The light in my mother's room remained on until midnight. She seemed to be waiting for something. Just after midnight, a dark cloud outside the window completely obscured the moonlight. In the darkness, the baby's cries rang out again. Only this time, it was particularly piercing. When I entered Anya's room, the moonlight reappeared, helping me see everything inside clearly. A blood-soaked child was crying in Anya's arms. Anya tenderly cradled her child with all her affection. The ghost fetus had finally been born. At that very moment, the room door was kicked open from outside, and a cold, eerie gust of wind immediately swept in. My mother stood at the doorway, clutching several red silk sashes. Indeed, this hussy has stolen my son's body. Now that the ghost fetus is born, it's time to send you and your child away. As soon as she finished speaking, she grabbed a red silk sash, intending to tie up the baby in Anya's arms. Anya having just given birth, was still very weak. I quickly pulled my mother back. "Get out. If you hadn't buried them both in the ground, my brother would be alive now. And the medicine you gave me, I didn't make him drink it." My mother's fierce expression frightened me somewhat. The moment my grip loosened, my mother unexpectedly snatched the baby. She stared at the child in her hands with vicious eyes and immediately wrapped a piece of red silk around its neck. As soon as the sash touched it, a desperate cry echoed through the room. The red silk seemed to burn the baby like fire. The heart-wrenching cries made Anya desperately urge me, "Quickly! Splash it on the baby!" I took out the jar from behind my back and immediately splashed the blood inside onto the baby. My mother saw this and shrieked at Anya, "Your husband isn't dead yet." Then she slapped me directly across the face. "Don't you know? A ghost fetus touched by kindred blood can no longer be destroyed. If the ghost fetus isn't destroyed, how can your brother use this body to return? By doing this, do you still want to save your brother?" My heart suddenly became incredibly calm. I held my face and looked at my mother, smiling coldly. "No, I don't. Mother, you've harmed so many people just to steal a life for my brother. Do you still want to keep taking more lives?" What Anya had asked me to do that day was to get her husband's blood. The flesh worm that stole lives had long since merged with the bodies of my brother and Anya. That night, she wanted the blood to create a protective charm for her child. Little did she know, the flesh worm in his body had gnawed away at her husband until he was barely clinging to life. Although Anya harbored deep hatred for these people, for her child's sake, she suppressed her resentment, only hoping to bring it into this world. It was also thanks to my mother's silver needles that the baby's father's life was maintained. At this moment, my mother was frantic, her hands tightly gripping the newborn's throat. But it was too late. When those drops of blood had gradually permeated the baby's body, my mother was flung to the ground by an invisible force. The fire on the red silk sash suddenly spread to my mother. She shrieked and struggled, but it was futile. The baby on the ground suddenly let out a bizarre laugh. It opened its eyes and looked at my mother, an ominous glint flashing in its gaze. Anya quickly hugged her child, heartbroken. A tender voice, like the decree of a wronged spirit, echoed above my mother's head. "Yeah, you killed me and my mother, so you must die too." My mother looked at the baby in Anya's arms, in horror, kicking her legs wildly. "Monster! It's a monster!" No sooner had she spoken than the baby's pupils suddenly turned pale. Anya quickly soothed it. "No, child, you must not harm human lives. Mother still needs to take you to be reborn." But she couldn't stop the baby in her arms. The red silk sash on the ground suddenly flew up and wrapped tightly around my mother's neck. Just as my mother was about to be choked to death in the fire, a talisman suddenly flew from afar and stuck to the baby's forehead. The fire on my mother's body also extinguished. "You, brazen woman, daring to give birth to a ghost fetus in the human world." Anya heard this voice and immediately knelt down in fear, clutching her child tightly. "Yes, great underworld envoy, when your humble servant died, my child had not yet been born. If I hadn't given birth to it, I would have just watched it vanish into thin air on the Yellow Springs path. Well, when the underworld envoy Anya spoke of appeared in our house, my entire body froze. An indescribable majesty prevented me from looking up. I gritted my teeth and spoke in my heart. Great underworld envoy, these two, mother and child, died unjustly. The figure remained silent for a long time before finally speaking. I didn't expect someone would still dare to use such a heaven-defying life-stealing technique. This body should have been destroyed long ago. Keeping it in the world only brings disaster. My mother, lying nearby, was barely breathing. Hearing these words, she struggled to sit up, shouting, "No one is to touch my son's body." "My son will surely come back to life." The underworld envoy gave a cold laugh. From his hand, a ball of spectral fire shot out, striking my brother's body. Anya's soul immediately flew out, standing to one side. Only my brother's body was slowly consumed by the flames, turning into dust. My mother watched the scene in utmost agony. She used all her remaining strength to lunge forward. As the spectral fire burned her body, I suddenly saw a look of satisfaction on her face. "Don't be afraid, my son. Wherever you go, I will go with you." Before she could finish speaking, only 2 piles of ashes remained in the room. I mumbled, "All these years, mother, you forgot that you weren't only a mother to my brother." Anya, still clutching her baby, huddled in a corner. After understanding the full story, the underworld envoy was finally generous, allowing them to reincarnate together. Before leaving, Anya called me aside. She took my hand and gave me a stone jar. Seeing what was inside, I quickly waved my hand. "I can't accept this harmful thing." Anya patted me and said, "Listen to me. This flesh worm was originally a rare treasure used by healers to cure illnesses. It was only because your mother tampered with it that it became a tool of harm. Now I'm entrusting it to you. It won't go wrong." The underworld envoy, standing nearby, seeing the flesh worm in the jar, couldn't help but say, "Little girl, this is a good thing. Remember to use it properly in the future." I looked at the plump white flesh worm and nodded seriously. Anya held her baby in her arms, her face filled with a smile. She slowly walked to the underworld envoy and waved goodbye to me. "If it weren't for your kindness in burying me and my child, I wouldn't have been able to give birth to him to be reborn. Thank you for helping me and my child so much." Her voice faded further and further away until their figures completely disappeared into the night. I held the stone jar in my hand, gently poking the flesh worm inside. Many people in the village had been harmed by my mother. Now this flesh worm was in my hands, but I didn't know how to use it to save people. Just then, my finger suddenly felt a gentle gnawing sensation. Years of impressions of the flesh worm made me quickly pull my hand away. But as soon as I pulled it back, I realized my fingertip had accidentally been burned. The charred skin stuck to the wound. I suddenly thought, and quickly placed my hand back near the flesh worm. The plump white flesh worm seemed to be delighted, licking and gnawing at my wound again. Before long, the dead skin was cleaned away. Where the wound had been licked, a thin light membrane formed. I could clearly see the wound on my fingertip gradually healing. So that's how it is. I gently closed the lid of the stone jar and hugged it to my chest. I looked up at the distant night sky, gently patting the jar, and murmured, "The path ahead is still very long. We must all choose the right way."